Thank you. So welcome to this week's TOC. We've got a fairly action-packed agenda this week. So we've got review the actions from last week, review of outstanding PRs, an update on naming, if there is one, from Chris. Then we've got Amelia giving us the app runtime platform update, and then space for any other business. So taking it away, reviewing the actions from last week is really quick. There weren't any, yay. So that takes us on to reviewing the outstanding PRs, which hopefully we should be fairly okay with. I will start posting. So the first one we've got is fixing the URL of community repo where to file a PR. So looking at that, looks like you're happy with that one now, Eric?
Yep, looks good.
Okay, cool. So I think we're fine to press the button on that one. So let's get that one done. Then the next one that we've got going down the list is my acceptance script, which no one's had a look at, which is absolutely fine. But we have actually got something that's ready to use it on in anger if someone would like to give it a go at some point. So that's all cool. So then machine parsable working groups, which we'll just paste in there. So this was Ruben updating and getting everything into line after various movements had happened underneath, and all looks good as far as I can see on there. Stephan, I see that you've approved that one.
Yep, I checked the sea of deployments working groups that was still missing in the last version, but it's now added and yeah, looks good. I mean, it has no real effect yet, right? Because it's not, yeah, it's just another way to document it.
Yeah.
Which is good.
Yeah. If we not merge it, it will be out of sync again. So,
yeah. That makes a lot of sense to not last it forever as a PR.
Yeah, so it would be handy to get another couple of eyes on that one, just to see if we can get that through fairly quickly. Okay, and the last one that I've got to flag up is actually an older PR that has now been updated to the new RFC format by Jeff, which is the RFC for Project Roadmap and Visibility. This is the one that I flagged up that should be ready to merge because we all agreed that it was good before. We were just waiting on the new format. So I think we should be okay to go with that one. And if someone would like to try the script out, then yay. Okay, and that is all the PRs that we have responsibility for at this point that aren't about to shortly be brought to our attention, I believe, unless I've missed anything. Oh, cool. So, Amelia, over to you.
Did you want to do the naming update?
Oh, sorry, yes. It's all right. I'm running out of sync. So, Chris, naming. Has there been any updates?
Yeah, nothing concrete. But the CF on Kate's group did give a very nice presentation to the governing board last week, and that was well received. I've reached out to LF Legal about the 3 names that they've kind of are in the top 3. I'm not entirely sure what the protocol is for due diligence on trademarks and things like that, so I'm waiting to hear back about that. But as of right now, it is, I think, Bifrost, Karifi, and Pharos are all sort of still contenders, with Bifrost being the the favorite of the working group. So yeah, hopefully we'll get a name finalized in the next few weeks.
Cool. I want to
Awesome.
rename my working group to something cool like Five Frost. I'll add this next time I come to this group. Okay, I'll go into my update. Let's see, no surprises. I wrote it all out here, so I don't have to take notes and you don't have to take notes. Let's see, the first two things that we can do are look over some, if you go back in time to November, some very old PRs that I have finally moved over to the new RFC workflow. I did not change any of the content of these PRs with the exception of some wording around adding the RFC words like may and should, and there's another one, whatever, those words. I went with the, of course, more hedging should in most cases, especially the moving to the PR only workflow. You know, some people have brought up like some working groups, build packs, you know, might already have some workflows in place that they like, or maybe there's some repos where we don't want this, like a CI repo. Okay, those aren't, but in most cases should. I'm not sure. I think one of them has enough approvers to be merged and one does not. So I will ask for your reviews and merging capabilities as an action from this meeting. Cool. I just posted some links here in case we wanted to look at them. I didn't really have anything to say about our form notes. Just an overview, like we have 4 different areas inside of our working group. And so one of the things I've been trying to get from my working group members is like, okay, what do we want to change? Like, what is the most important? And so the very first most important thing was, hey, we would like people to look at our issues and PRs in a more timely manner. So the result of that is we have projects now. The projects help elevate them because if you saw that list from that PR, I think we have something like 100 repos. It's hard to keep track of all the issues and PRs. So the projects help us do that. And we've moved to a practice of like I assign people to do them. So as from the approvers, I assign people to review the PRs and we have some kind of workflow for that. The only thing that's been kind of interesting is I've also told people that if you want to become an approver, I can also add you to that list. So you can be like the first person to review a PR and then later you have to get an approver to actually merge it. Or you can be the person to reply to an issue and bring it to completion. So there's approvers plus people who want to become approvers. Another thing that the community asks for is updates on what's being worked on. It's like, we don't know what people are working on at all. We have no way to comment on it. That sucks. So we also have this proposal board. And if you click on it, you'll see that the biggest things that we're working on right now is logging is working on updating HTTP metrics. Networking is working on NATs moving to V2. And we're working on dynamic ASGs, which some MVP version of that is done, but we're still making improvements. So I've still left it in the in progress. And as we, especially like at VMware, are deciding, you know, what are we focusing on next? I'm making sure to update this so that it's obvious and there's an issue. And every time that something's added to this board, I get someone from the engineering team to present to the working group. So that's been a nice change. Let's see, that's what I said here. Yep, all issues and PRs are being merged. And one sad change is that both Ivan and Mikey have left the working group. I haven't officially put in the PRs, but they are gone. And that's really sad. They were both working with SAP. I guess Ivan's still at SAP, I believe, just not working on Cloud Foundry. So that's kind of what's been done so far. Next steps is getting RFCs merged. That's your all action item. Right now, we have not made steps to actually, like, those PRs are about the GitHub teams and the PR workflow. I would say the working group has been pretty good about, oh, we know this PR workflow is coming, and they've started to use PRs. Like, I'm actually surprised how well it caught on without enforcing anything. But the enforcement is not there yet. And so both Jeff and Stephan have volunteered to start working on that, or like putting that in place. And I've seen Ruben not like around doing some automation. And so I think I'll hook them up with you to start doing that, because it's a lot of repos. So that's one thing that's coming up. That'll be nice. Another thing that will be nice is to get the reviewers assigned automatically. So to have that pulled in. Right now, there's not like an approvers or maintainers file or whatever the GitHub thing is. It's just so many repos, and it's just been like a little bit overwhelming. So it's like, okay, one step at a time. Right now I'm doing it manually, just from like going through the list and see who doesn't have any open.
There's an intermediate step you can use. You can use GitHub Teams and configure the reviewers there. There's like a section where you can say pick 2 out of a pool. And then you assign the team, and then it picks 2. And there's load balancing algorithms that you can configure there. So you still have to manually assign the team, but it at least does the distribution.
I will probably ask you about that later, or ask you to send it to me so I don't forget. That sounds great though. Thank you. And it would be great to have our first non-bootstrapped approvers join. Which leads me to my first like assistance from the TOC. I didn't have it ready for today, but I was wondering if there's appetite to alter this approver requirements. Right now, I'm just going to open it so I don't misquote it. To become an approver, it says you have to be a reviewer of the code base for 3 months. Okay, that's reasonable. And then a primary reviewer for at least 10 PRs and reviewed at least 30 PRs, 10 substantial PRs and 30. And I feel like this focuses like on PR, reviewing PRs specifically, in a way that doesn't talk about, oh, I resolved an issue, or maybe like I submitted a PR, or just other things that people could do that aren't just resolving or reviewing PRs. So I'm seeing some nods. If there's some appetite for that, I'll work on some wording around that in proposals, and I can bring that at a different time. But right now, the people who are interested in becoming approvers are looking at this like, okay, if I get load balance between 10 different people, and there's not that many PRs to begin with, that's like 30 PRs is going to take me 30 months, you know, or whatever.
It kind of makes sense, like, though that like maybe writing code and reviewing code are 2 different skills, and we're like, we want you to demonstrate that you can review a thing you didn't write. Maybe the number 10 is too much. Like, it depends on the activity and the repository. It depends on a bunch of stuff. If this is like Kubernetes itself or something, and there's just tons and tons of stuff coming in, right? It's easy to get that experience, right. But you could kind of imagine a scenario where that's not true. In our case, for sure. So I'm not sure an absolute number makes as much sense.
Yeah. Another case that it's very evident in is in Garden. The number of PRs there is about 0. The number of issues is very high. And we have basically one person on our team, Mark, who is doing everything now. And it's like, well, if it's only on PRs, you know, this is never going to happen. He's the only one submitting code. So I do think that there could be some kind of minimum for PRs. It's you're like, okay, these 3 things added together, you've done 30 of them, and some kind of something that fits our working style better would be nice. And then the other thing that I wanted to bring up is that because of Ivan and Mikey leaving, the Diego and logging metrics subgroups are now all VMware employees. Which kind of sucks.
Well, I can do some advertisement. I know that we have teams within SAP that work on these topics, and I could imagine that they would be willing to engage in the direction of getting an approver. Yeah, of course, there are these approval requirements, which will take then the 30 months. But okay, in general, I would expect, yeah, I can raise it internally and get.
Yeah, that would be great. I would love to hear from anyone, to have them reach out to me and say that they want to become an approver in this area so I can start assigning them things. and start getting these processes more nailed down, so it would be easier to do that. And that is my overview. Are there any questions?
To me, that makes sense to me that like the Diego and logging groups are emptying out more of non-VMware contributors. I think they're like the least user accessible, most backend thing. Like router is kind of very, very difficult technically, but it also is end user facing. So people care a lot about the behavior. You can see the details of the behavior. Same with class controller and CLI and all of that. But like the other stuff is very deep in the product. Not that there shouldn't be somebody there helping from other vendors. It's just the like overhead to even getting started, as we know, as we're trying to shuffle around who's working on what at VMware. And it's like, oh my gosh, how do we get familiar with Garden and Diego? Like, it's not trivial.
Amelia, are there other things that we as the TOC can help you with in addition to reviewing the RFCs and getting feedback on those and getting those incorporated? And discussing
I guess,
the approver thing.
Yeah, just finding out from Stephan if there's any more SAP people to like keep the community involved in all of our subgroups, I think will be the most helpful. So far, it's been actually very smooth. I've been very pleased.
Well, we like it when things sort of come together and work.
Is there anything that you all would like to see from me as a working group leader, as a working group representative?
No, I don't think so. I mean, you're incredibly well organized, so that's the main thing that we need. And you're not afraid to shout when you need help.
Yeah, I think it's really great that we've got the projects for the proposals and the areas of the working group. That level of visibility is, I think, extremely helpful. So thank you.
On the logistics side, I'd love to know how the rollout of like restructuring for PR only workflows and enforcing that goes across all the repos, and like what the right way to execute that is. But that's like a boring logistical challenge, but it's one of my favorite kinds of challenges. Similarly, if you feel like starting up a CI project in the open for any number of the runtime code bases, Chris and I have been securing budget for running a concourse. The problem is, and like being an excellent and efficient and organized executor, you would be great at piloting this program. But I understand that it's also a bunch of work and people like don't really understand the value. Do you have any, so to follow that up with a question, do you have any projects, you have projects with external contributors, non-VMware contributors, right? That like are running on VMware hardware for a CI perspective? Like, is that potentially, how do they gain access to it? I guess it's all on the public internet, so that's how they gain access to everything.
I think they don't even have access to it. I think it's not exposed to them at all. In the past, I've told individuals that I'm happy to add them like via GitHub so that they can view things.
Right.
But right now, yeah, it would be so much work to move it. And I believe that if the community members are saying, no, we really think this is important, I would say the community members who are not above me, who would actually need it, sorry you all, are telling me that this is actually something we really want, right? If like the SAP members are like, we need access to this, this is the most important next thing, then I would be willing to prioritize it, but I just don't see that ask from anyone. And from my point of view, it looks like so much work.
Right. That's all true. However, like we'll never get SAP members that can learn how to cut releases and like and debug CI failures, right? So it's in your best interest to share some of that less productive logistical overhead work if it were free, right? If it were free,
yes,
you'd be like, yeah, obviously I don't want to be the only one who can cut releases and debug CI failures. As much fun as it is to do that all the time, it's disproportionately allocated towards one vendor because we're running in the hardware of that vendor, right? and obviously we have to pay the bill at VMware too. So there's plenty of small reasons to move it, but I understand that there isn't a real driver that makes sense at the moment, and I'm okay with that. I think what I would love from you is if you see a new thing that you're moving CI anyway, or you're consolidating, let's use that as an opportunity to get that environment set up so that it's easier to transition anything else that we feel like later. There's some initial overhead. We got to deploy a concourse, right? And get a Google project from Chris and so on.
Oh, you don't even have a concourse running for us?
Oh,
we have to do
no,
our
it gets
own
even worse.
concourse? We just have GCP creds?
We have allocated budget for every working group to run its own concourse. And it's the working group lead gets to figure out how to operate and deploy that concourse. What an exciting thing for you to think about.
We already did that on the Bosch working group, foundational infrastructure. We have done that using Kubernetes, GKE, and then we use the patterns from CF4Kates. We have adopted those like Carvel patterns to do it, and that is fully reusable. So it's basically 5 minutes of work and you have a concourse running on Kates.
I think our bigger concern is that all of our tests use an internal tool called Smith, and those are internal pooled environments. And so all of our tests are written specifically for these pooled environments, which I've been told we cannot run on open source or non-VMware concourses. And so it would not only mean spinning up a new concourse, which not my favorite thing, but I understand, Ruben, yes, not impossible. Thank you. I'm glad you've done it. It's the like restriction of, oh, now we have to rewrite all of our tests that claim environments, and we either have to start spinning up long running environments again, which we used to do, and then there were issues with long running environments. That's really my big concern. And so if VMware is fine with us continually to using their pooled environments.
Maybe one step back here. The first requirement is that other approvers of other companies can cut releases. And I just looked at the CAPI channel and see that 15 minutes ago, a colleague of mine actually released CAPI 1.127. So that's possible. Of course, I know we are still using the VMware provided infrastructure, and we had a session with that, and so. But there are smaller steps. You don't have to go the long way from the beginning. Let's see. I'm actually myself curious how that works out for CF deployments, because that will be a bigger machinery, I guess.
Yeah. And Amelia, we also have budget for two other things. We have budget for some number of long-running environments, but we're not going to have the budget in the community for the level of long-running environments. So like we're going to have to think about sharing and strategizing better. It's like 4 small long-running environments and 1 large one, and like we're running like, I don't know, 20 or 30 across all of our teams.
Or for
exactly. Exactly. Right. Yeah, you can laugh at me, but we also have significant budget for Bosch lights that are spinning.
You can't use Bosch lights for networking.
This is what I was hoping you were not going to say. I was hoping you were going to say, well, that's excellent. Bosch light. First of all, it totally works. It's very reliable, and second of all, it works for all use cases, including the networking use case. Just curiously, what in your area prevents Bosch light from being viable, besides the fact it doesn't work very well from a reliability perspective?
I've been under the impression that we can't use Bosch lights, like not all of our test suites for like Silk and everything run on them. Like you can't change the networking, or the networking doesn't work appropriately when it's all in one machine and the things that we have to set up. It's been years since we tried to do it on Bosch light, and so the exact details escape me.
Interesting.
But I understand that you have budget for long running environments, so I would say that's monetary budget, not people budget.
The people, they just show up and consume the budget. You find the people. You're the people.
Yeah, and it's not like we use long running like that we can just share it. Like we have to change things like ASGs, and then we make it so that like no app can talk to anything at all, and we test ASGs, and then so it's not like another concourse could be using the same environment at the same time, or anyway.
Yep. Well, you and I can strategize anytime you want about like potential ways to consume this, and you can call into question my entire long-term strategy there, and that's fine, because like we don't absolutely need to move everything over. Maybe there's some stuff like networking which is too hard to move over, and some stuff that isn't too hard to move over, and that would still be a win.
But in the short term, I'm more than happy to, if any community member wants to access to our concourse, we should be able to give it to them. And it's split up in such a way that, you know, our closed source stuff is separate from our, you know, our closed source releasing is separate from our open source releasing.
Cool. Has anyone got anything else for Amelia? No. Okay, cool. So that moves us on to any other business. I've got one thing that I'd like to throw out there, and it's kind of in Ruben's direction, and that's around some thought for testing of PRs on the automation side of things, because we've had a few where it's been interesting failures that don't get caught until the last minute, and then fixing things, and it's a bit painful.
Yeah, that's around the GitHub Teams automation, right? Yeah, like manual changes there. The problem is that to run it in dry mode, it still takes 1.5 hours. So you don't have like really fast feedback there. But yeah, we could definitely do that. Also, I assume this will be less once we start generating that file based on the working group definitions.
I have one feedback on the same topic, basically. So Jochen, the workgroup lead of CF deployments, set up the teams, and that worked. Unfortunately, the teams are not assigned to the repositories. And now the question is, should we do that manually, or should we wait until, I don't know, some issues with the automation are fixed?
I think those issues were resolved. There was just a PR
okay.
around, I think they reused the parent and the child of like teams had the same name, and that was the problem. And that was fixed. And I think it has been green ever since. So maybe he can check again.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Don't think that this is already resolved. So if I look at CF deployments, there are historic teams, but none of the new teams, which should have working group in the name. Or VG, WG, sorry. So there's still something fishy.
Interesting.
Yeah, we basically need like a dedicated team to deal with this automation. I mean, do you have budget for that?
A meta working group.
I think at the Kubernetes side of things, they have some like sort of infra group that deals with automating the working groups. But yeah, problem for a different time, I guess. Is there, do we have issues or something? How do we want to track this? Does it make sense to maybe create an issue in the community and then assign it to people, and then we're gonna go from there?
Makes sense. I can ask Jochen because he can then also link to the commit, etc. And then we can go from there. That makes sense.
Yeah, seems like the ideal way to track it. Okay. Has anyone got anything else? Okay. So I've got one other action to assign to somebody, and that's to contact the CF on Kubernetes working group for next week. Anyone fancy that one?
Yeah, I can talk to the leads there.
Cool. Okay, so I will put that one against you. So I'll just go through the actions that we picked up then. So Eric, you're going to contact the working group for next week. Stephan, you're going to advertise the Diego and logging and metrics subgroups within SAP. And then we've got a TOC review for the RFC for project roadmap and visibility. A TOC review on the acceptance script, which could be used on the roadmap and visibility. Then a TOC review on the PR workflow RFC and GitHub Teams RFC. Have I missed any actions? No. Cool. Oh, if no one's got anything else, then I guess we should probably gain a bit of time. And thank you very much for your time this week.
Thanks,
I just
everyone.
found a
See you.
flag.
Huh? Oh, you just found a flag?
There's a fix or team repos or something like, so I'll create a pull request to add that.
Ah, okay, cool.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Thanks.
See you.
Take care.